I figured if I want to publish content consistently on multiple channels, I have 3 options. 1. Create different content for each platform. Shorts for YouTube, posts for Facebook, Reels for Instagram, and so on. Option 2. Publish the same content on all platforms. And option 3. Take the same idea and repurpose it for each platform. Now, one option is insane, one is lazy, and one is the smart choice if you're like me and you want to create content as part of your business, but not make it your entire business 24/7. I've tried all 3 options in the past 12 months, and today I want to share which option is the best one for a content business owner who doesn't want to be a full-time content creator. And also how you can put it into practice with a simple 3-step system so that content doesn't take over everything. If you want to hear about the 3-step system right away, jump to the time code shown here in the video. Otherwise, let's talk about option 1. The very first video I uploaded on my old YouTube channel took me 4 weeks to produce really. 3 weeks to turn an idea into a video script, 1 week to record, edit and publish. After that, I wrote posts for Facebook and LinkedIn from scratch. The time commitment was insane, to say the least, and completely unsustainable if I wanted to publish each week on all platforms. I treated every video as a separate project. The Facebook post was a project. The Instagram Reel was another project, meaning every piece needed its own idea, research, writing, production, and then distribution. To be fair, I was just starting out back then and I had to learn about content creation for business purposes. So yeah, everything took a little while longer compared to today. Now it takes me about a day to go from idea to video script, not 3 weeks. Even the shooting and editing is a lot faster. But that's beside the point. Option 1, creating different content for each platform, may be the most creative option, but from a business perspective, it's the most time-consuming one. If you have a creative team behind you, let them go for it, I guess. But if you're running a business pretty much by yourself, option 1 is not the way to go. Well, in my opinion, at least. Too much time goes into creating something that only a small number of people will ever see initially. The return on investment is simply not there in the beginning, because making different pieces of content for multiple platforms is pretty much the equivalent of reinventing the wheel every time. At least that's what it looks like to me from the perspective of a content business owner whose business is not content creation. Option 2 was the logical evolution. In a way, it's the other extreme compared to option 1. Instead of making individual pieces of content for each platform, make just one and post that everywhere. So if we look at the time commitment involved, this one is definitely the smarter option. Because even though there is some effort necessary to upload and schedule the same content on all platforms, the time commitment is significantly lower now. So that's a lot less work right here. But hey, hold on! Isn't the rule that you shouldn't post the same piece of content on multiple platforms? Maybe you've heard people say that before. Because a short on YouTube is not the same as a reel on Instagram or a post on LinkedIn. And all platforms have different formats and styles. I don't question that. But, and that's a big but, we have to take into account what the posting on each platform is for. What's the goal for you and me really? You know, if it's to gain 1, 2, 5 million followers on each and every social media channel, yeah, you shouldn't post the same short everywhere. But if the goal is to build an audience, experiment with platforms and the workflows there, or get your ideas out in the world to see how they resonate with real people, I think posting the same content can be the way to go. For a while at least. You know, things evolve. Followers and subscribers may grow on one platform more than on another in the future, which means there is a different approach necessary then. But hey, can we please stop with you must post different things on every channel every week? That's really bad advice. If you're starting out as a business operator and you want to distribute your ideas, why not publish the same stuff everywhere? Realistically, Maybe that's not the way to get 1 million followers in a few months, but do I really need that many? Personally, I rather have 1,000 people who are committed to my work than 1 million who don't care. And this is an important point, by the way. Nobody cares. You know, if you create content, it's so easy to get invested in the idea. I mean, we spend so much time thinking about them, we forget that other people don't. They're not invested. They don't think about our ideas and they don't care. Which is one of the main reasons option 2, publishing the same content on all platforms, is such a strong case for anyone who wants to create content but not do it full time. No one cares initially what we publish. I literally have a client in the health and well-being niche who has about 40,000 followers on Instagram right now, but 0 conversion from that channel. 40,000 people follow them and not a single one buys the offer. Could that work out better for my client if they would post different stuff on different platforms? Maybe, but they would be better off posting the same stuff everywhere if it means they don't commit more time to making content for 0 return. The point is, option 2 might be the smart option depending on your specific goals. It's that last part many content creators forget about when they share this "you must post different formats on different channels" advice. It depends on your specific goals and many other factors like your time commitment and resources for one. I can tell you option 2 worked really well for me in the past year because I take the short from YouTube and publish it on Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn without investing more time for very little ROI. Of course, if your goal is to get more out of this, option 2 is actually the lazy way. That's why we need to talk about option 3. Take the same idea and repurpose it for each platform. So, same content, different formats basically. In my last video, I made the point that to publish consistently, it was necessary for me to come up with a system to turn ideas into content, not just faster but reliably as well. That's what capture, validate and prioritize was all about. I capture all my content ideas before I forget them. I validate if there is a real problem behind each one, and then I prioritize each idea before I produce anything. In a way, that's the system before this one we're about to discuss. Turn ideas into content in 3 steps, right? My argument was, if we invest time and energy in an idea system like that one, it should produce more than a single piece of content, cause it's work to capture, validate, and prioritize ideas. And the return on investment should be higher than 3 steps producing only 1 post. Now, if you haven't watched that video, I put the link in the description below or up here. With option 3, we can use the idea we just worked over to repurpose content on multiple platforms. It's the video turned into a reel, the short turned into a LinkedIn post, and so on. Multi-platform posting of the same content idea in slightly different variations, because each platform does demand a different format. The message can be the same, the output looks different though. If you look at my LinkedIn profile, you can see what I'm talking about. I've been posting on a regular schedule in the past few weeks again. And while I upload video clips that are the same ones I have on YouTube, the post that goes along with them is not just a word-for-word transcript. Same idea as in the clip, but repurposed for the style that's more common on LinkedIn. I'm still rolling this out on Facebook and Instagram at the time, but the principle behind is the same. Same idea, repurposed on different platforms. So how do we put option 3 into practice without adding more time and work to the content workflow? Because that kinda defeats the whole purpose. The goal here is not to create more work for ourselves. The goal is to get more content out of the work we're already doing. I simply use a 3-step system again. Start with the core idea, adapt the format, and distribute next. And the important thing is that this is not a system for creating 3, 4, 5 completely different pieces of content, like it would be for option 1 we talked about, right? We're still working with a single idea, we're just giving that idea different ways to show up depending on where we're publishing it. Step 1 is to start with the core idea. Before I think about Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, or any other platform, I get clear on the actual idea I'm trying to communicate. What's the problem we're talking about? What's the insight I want to share? What's the argument? What do I want somebody to understand or do differently after consuming that piece of content? That's the starting point, which is basically the output of the capture, validate, and prioritize system. So we already did the work. Let's say the idea is creating different content for every platform is too time consuming for a business owner who does not actually want content creation to become their full-time job. That's the idea, which I have captured before, validated as in, yes, that's a real problem people have, and then prioritized. Once I have that, I don't need to come up with another idea for LinkedIn. I don't need a completely different idea for Instagram. I don't need to sit down on Monday and think, okay, what's my YouTube idea? What's my Facebook idea? What's my LinkedIn idea? I've already done that work. The idea becomes my source material in a way. And this is where I think a lot of people make content creation unnecessarily complicated. They think too much about content in terms of individual posts and videos, but I think it's more useful to see ideas as assets because it changes the way I approach the entire workflow. Instead of asking, what should I post next? I'm asking, how many useful pieces of content can I create from this one idea? Step 2 is then to adapt the format to the platform. Now that I know what the core idea is, I ask a very simple question. What does this idea look like on this platform? Because the answer doesn't have to be the same everywhere. For YouTube, the idea might be a longer video where I explain the argument and explain the full system. For LinkedIn, I tend to turn the same idea into a text post, which doesn't mean copying the YouTube transcript and pasting it into LinkedIn. I simply take the same underlying idea and rewrite it in a way that it makes sense for LinkedIn. Same idea, different content, different entry point. And that's really how I define repurposing here. Not copy and paste, that would be option 2, but also not starting from zero like option 1. Basically, the message stays relatively stable, but the packaging changes. The reason this is useful is that every platform has its own conventions. People consume content differently depending on where they are. Someone scrolling through LinkedIn, let's say, isn't necessarily in the same mindset as someone watching Reels on Instagram. So there's no reason to force exactly the same piece of content into every channel. But there's also no reason to come up with a new idea every time. That's the balance we're looking for. Because I've already thought through the idea ones, the second and the third content versions are usually much easier to create. I already know what I'm trying to say. I already have the examples. Now I'm simply asking, how do I make this useful in another format? And that's a much smaller creative task than starting with a blank page. Step 3 is to publish and see how things develop. For example, I've posted scripted shorts for a few months and the views didn't really reflect the work and the effort that went into all of them. Funny enough, when I went on vacation for 3 weeks not too long ago, I only posted clips I cut from scheduled long-form videos, and some of them got like 100 times the views compared to the dedicated shorts I did before. So we can spend huge amounts of time trying to predict what will work before we publish anything. We can debate the hooks, the formats, and whether LinkedIn prefers this type of post or Instagram likes that type of reel. But sometimes I think we just need to put the idea out there and see what happens in real life. The beauty of repurposing is that we can test the same idea in several places without having to create several completely different ideas. Maybe the YouTube video doesn't do particularly well, but the LinkedIn post based on the exact same idea starts a great conversation. Maybe nothing happens anywhere, and that's useful information as well if you think about it. At least we haven't spent the effort creating 5 unrelated pieces of content just to learn that the underlying idea wasn't interesting in the first place. And that's when the system gets even more powerful, because we're going into a feedback loop now. One idea goes into the system. We create the original piece. We adapt it for the platforms that matter. We publish. We see how people respond. And those results help us make better decisions about the next ideas. But just to be clear, if you're a business owner, you probably don't even need to be everywhere. Choose the platforms that make sense for your audience, for your goals, and the amount of time and work you're willing to invest. If that's YouTube, LinkedIn, and Instagram, fine. If it's just YouTube or just LinkedIn, that's fine too. The system works either way. The whole point is to stop treating every platform like a completely separate content business, because that's exactly what makes option 1 so insane. Every platform gets its own ideas, own research, own script, its own production process, and even a distribution process. With this approach here, we can reverse that now. But none of this matters, of course, if creating and repurposing all this content still takes up your entire week. Because even with a good idea system and a smart repurposing workflow that we discussed here, there is another way to make the whole process significantly more efficient. And that's batch producing your content. So instead of switching between ideation, scripting, recording, editing, and then publishing every single day, you should group similar tasks together and create multiple pieces of content in one go. And that can save even more time and make consistency a lot easier. That's exactly what I want to talk about in the next video. How I use content batching as a tool to get more done without spending more time creating content in the first place. Thanks for watching today, and I see you over there.